Okay, so what we're going to do is demonstrate a little bit some of the mixing that we've done here with the glider. And let's set up our radios first. Let's get everything going, the radio and the receiver.
Welcome to Volantex TX16S.
So this is a Radiomaster TX16S that I'm using. And I'll show in a second what we have inside here, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the receiver on this Phoenix 2400 that I just put together. So now that we're all connected, I'm going to show a little bit what we got going inside, and then we're going to move into the functioning of the mixers and so on. In the setup that I have here for the Phoenix is I do have a GRX8 receiver. It's a FreeSky receiver. It's an 8-channel receiver that I'm pretty much using 7 channels of it right now, and as you can see, the majority of the channels, or the majority, I'm sorry, of the servos are managed by this side, enabled through a specific procedure on this particular receiver, the use of channel 7, which is on this side. And the idea is that I wanted to just kind of leave things a little bit untangled there, so that the power, which is, channel 7 right now is what I'm using, is for the speed controller. So so it would be sort of away from the rest of the stuff that goes into the back of the glider. And right now I got a 2200 milliamp 11.1 volt LiPo battery there for this, and 3-cell. Okay, we're going to take a look at the transmitter and the functions that I'm using on them. As you can see, I'd like to have like a view where I can see all my controls on the screen. I have a timer in there because I have a receiver that's got vario. I will be receiving vario information as well. I haven't completely set it up the way I normally use it, but little by little I'll add as I go. The functions are basically relatively simple, and I'm using the Mode 2 AETR kind of configuration. So I basically have aileron, elevator, rudder, and throttle here, and I do take advantage of the switches. So starting from this side, I have the RS slider, the right slider, essentially, that's providing me a gain for the mix of rudder and aileron. I have the SH switch, which actually I swapped these switches around. I have this switch now be a 2-position switch, and this one be the momentary switch. So on the 2-position switch I have the idle cutoff, and then going that way. Oh, and this one here, SG, is now my vario switch. So I turn my vario on so it starts talking to me, and then another click and I have altitude. So
vario on.
That's vario.
Current altitude
0 feet. Vario on.
And then tells me if it's off or on or whatever. Right now I don't have the receiver on, so that's why I'm not getting any more information. But obviously, if the vario was on, it would give me the chirps that belong to that particular sensor. Anyway, going this way again, this one is S1 is volume. I can regulate the volume of the transmitter. The 6-position switch are for the different flight modes that I'm using. So I have normal flight mode, so it defaults to that. And what it means really is that I'm not applying flaps really. It's just a normal pure aileron, scenario. Then on 2 is launch, and there's things that happen there with the elevator and the throttle, along with a couple of degrees of flap on take a couple of flap positions for launch. Also I have 3, which is thermal. Then mostly the application of flaps to create camber, and I'll show it to you as well. 4 is going to be speed, which is basically reflex. So it's basically it's opposite to camber. I go up with the flaps, so create more of a streamline and faster profile for the airfoil. And then I got 5, which is landing, and that's really the application of flaps, and ultimately you can do crow. So at that, which by the way is on a switch. So anyway, coming this way, this is rates. So this is high rates, low rates, mid rates, and low rates.
mid rates
And then I have here crow, which is only applicable when I when I'm on landing mode. So even though I push it now, there, crow on and crow off. This is a 3-position switch. I'm kind of wasting a position on it actually, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you know, as long as I remember that down is crow, and then the other one is off, any one of the 2 higher positions. This one here is flaps.
Flap position 1, flap position 2, flap position 0.
And like I said before, this is instant trim.
Instant trim.
And that's pretty much the setup on the transmitter. I mean, there's obviously, if we take a look at the, I'm going to give you a glance at to the mixes that I have here, but let's look at mixes. There's a ton of stuff in there. Channel 1 and 3 are aileron. Channel 2, there we go. Channel 2 is elevator. Channel 4 is rudder. Channel 5 and 6 are flaps. And channel 7 is actually throttle. That's the way I set it up, and that's another beauty of this thing. You can pretty much set it up however you want. Okay, so I'm going to turn the receiver on, and I'm going to put the camera in a different angle so you guys can see the different things that happen when I apply these combination of things here, these mixes and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at how. One thing that we can start with is looking in any one of the modes that I have. This is always happening, which is them mixing flaps, you know, with ailerons. So when I move the ailerons, the flaps help the ailerons by moving in the same direction on each side of the, respectively, on each side of the plane or the wings. So for example, if I move up, or I move left rather, or I turn right, roll to the left, I'm getting movement on both these surfaces in a certain proportion so that the flaps are following the ailerons. That helps basically in the turns. And the next feature is I'm going to go into launch mode.
Launch mode.
And I'm going to show you what happens here. So launch mode with the flaps on position 0, nothing's happening there, but as soon as I put it in position 1, flaps will go down a notch.
Flap position 1.
And if I wanted to, you know, take off with a little bit more flaps,
flap position 2.
I go on a second position on flaps. Okay, I'm going to show you now one thing that I do is when I am in launch mode, I put throttle in and the elevator will go down, will go negative a little bit, and that's to prevent the nose from going up too far, too fast, especially when you're going high powered, when you're climbing. It can always compensate, here, I still have control over the elevator, but let me put throttle in and see what happens. And again, I have full control even though I'm doing that, so I can always override. Okay, let's take a look at some of the flight mode characteristics. So I'm in launch mode now, and let's take a look at what happens when I apply flaps, right? So flight position 1.
Flap position 1. Flap position 2.
So that's launch mode, and again I explained the throttle. If I accelerate, basically I got elevator down mix in there as well. With a curve, it's easy to do.
Flap position 0.
And I'm going back to flight position 0 now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself in thermal. After you launch, you want to go into thermal, so you can start seeking for thermal. So what we're going to look for is camber.
Thermal mode.
I'm in thermal mode now. I mean mode 0. Basically everything's the same. I still have control, obviously, as normal. And by the way, I'm going to show you in a second too the mix of rudder and elevator if you're interested in seeing how that works. But essentially is the one that I'm controlling with the right slider. Anyway, here we go with the flap positions for this. So, oops.
Flap position 1.
Now keep in mind I'm thermaling here, so it's essentially very similar to launch, just a little bit, maybe a little bit more, slightly more camber or more, down on the flaps.
Flap position 2.
And there's flap position 2. So again, and if you basically fly, the elevator goes and moves around, and the flap basically follows, maintaining the lower position so you can continue to maintain camber.
Flap position 0.
And then back to position 0 on the flaps. Then we're going to go to speed mode.
Speed mode.
And speed mode again is to go from thermal to thermal faster. So what we'll see here is a different situation. The flaps are going to come up instead. So
flap position 1. Flap position 2.
it's very little, but enough to create like a change on the airfoil design or on the airfoil shape, so that it becomes a little faster or more fluent through through the air. And again, if I move the ailerons back and forth, I get basically the flaps following that.
Flap position 0.
Now let's go to landing.
Landing mode.
If nothing's touched, everything's the same. I can still control everything the same way. So flap position 1, 2, you'll see it now.
Flap position 1. Flap position 2.
And one thing I'll say though is that with this glider, I have to play a little bit more. I'd like to have more than this for down. I haven't really tested, so I got to see how this works. But my guess is I'm going to be putting a lot more flap than this actually. But that requires a little bit of playing around mechanically and electronically to get that to happen, and probably do some sub trimming and things of that nature. So I haven't really gotten that far yet with it, but again, at any rate, I'm going to show you that I can still essentially have aileron and flaps follow each other as they go through movements.
Flap position 0.
So that was pretty much the 5 modes, and I'll go back to normal again.
Normal mode.
And very briefly see if I can show you the mix between aileron and rudder. Here the idea is to see how the ailerons and the rudder behave when I'm putting aileron on, and also when I'm playing with the gain that I have on RS. So if you see the rudder in the mix, so if I bring this to 0, the rudder won't move, but the ailerons will. And of course, keep in mind I'm mixing flaps and ailerons, so that's why you see that everything move here. No matter what I'm doing, I always have that mix in, so that when I take a turn, the flaps help the turn, even if it's 0 flaps. Then let's see. If I add full rudder, and again, it's based on a curve, so whatever the curve maximum is, it's how much actually mixed in I'm going to have. And I think I'll have it up to 50% or maybe more. I'm not sure. But even then, you can modify these things as you find appropriate depending on the plane you're flying. But here it is, full RS or right slider, and you can see the back how it moves. Now while I'm doing this, I have full authority with the rudder anyway, so I can still and depends of course on the rates I'm using. If I'm using mid rates, it's going to be less. Either way, it's going to be less, and low rates are going to be really little, right? So anyway, it's all sort of, everything comes together into the one function through this. Explain this crow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the glider in landing mode. And then I'm going to go ahead and push the switch that I have for crow, which is SA in this case. And what should happen is I should basically get the flaps to go down, and I should basically also get the ailerons to go up, essentially, and I'll get also a little bit of down elevator just to compensate for the amount of flaps going down. So essentially that's what it is. I mean, you got the flaps down, you got the the ailerons up, and you got the elevator slightly down to compensate. And that's basically crow.
Crow on.
One more time. Crow on.
Crow on.
I hope you can see all that in one sweep of the the switch.
Crow on.
Okay, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was useful for you. Keep your wings low and keep flying. Bye-bye.